Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey at the JX Fight Club in Shanghai, China. Today let's have a talk about the rules of the sport of mixed martial arts. Because I keep getting comments on my videos saying, well, I would totally compete in the sport of mixed martial arts and I would even dominate, except for all of those pesky rules that would get in the way. Because in MMA you can't do... And then they'll make up some rule that doesn't even exist in the sport. Usually, they'll say something along the lines of, well, you can't do wrist locks in MMA, and my martial art's all about wrist locks. Yeah, you can do wrist locks. It's totally legal. There's no rule against it. It's just really, really hard to do that against people who know how to fight. Or they'll say, oh, you can't stomp the knee, you can't kick the knee. Yeah, you can. It's totally legal, and it actually happens all the time. Well, why don't you see people snapping their legs in half? Well, for the simple reason that that is really hard to do against people who know how to fight. Fighting live humans is pretty different than fighting conceptual, imaginary creations of our mind. So let's go through an actual list of unified rules. Unified rules is UFC rules. Bear in mind, not all mixed martial arts organizations follow this set of rules. It's simply the most popular one. So, rule number 1, no grabbing the fence. You cannot insert your fingers into the chain link of the fence, and that is predominantly for your own safety. Now, it is possible to gain an advantage. You can grab the fence and start throwing kicks at a downed opponent, for example, for a little extra leverage. But if somebody has a hold of your legs and they rip those legs out from under you, take you down while you're holding the fence, your fingers are coming off in that chain link. So that is predominantly for your own safety. Next rule, holding an opponent's shorts or gloves. Now my advice about shorts, wear those spandex vale tudo shorts, and they're really, really hard to grab a hold of in the first place. Because there's the rules and then there's the rules. People will always grab a hold of whatever they can, whether it's against the rules or not. And we have to understand, they're not called rules per se, they're called fouls. This is a list of fouls. Things that will result in a penalty, a loss of a point, for example, or if a foul results in a serious injury, then you could lose the match. It doesn't mean these things don't happen. They happen all the time in the sport of mixed martial arts. That is why rule number 1 of fighting is intelligently defend yourself at all times, because nobody else will do that for you. It's not the referee's job to make sure your hands are up. That's yours. Next rule, the gloves. This is a commonly misunderstood one. No holding the gloves. A lot of people think that means you can't grab a hold of the hand. That's not true. That simply means you cannot insert your finger into the loops or the straps of the gloves to try to stall, to try to tear the equipment, to get a break, for example, or to gain an advantage. You can totally grab any part of the glove. You simply cannot insert your fingers into the straps. Now, you can grab your own equipment. You can hold your own gloves any way you want. You simply cannot grab your opponent's. The same holds true of shorts. You can grab your own shorts however you want. You simply cannot grab your opponent's. Now, if you come from a Brazilian jiu-jitsu or a judo background, you understand that holding on to parts of your opponent's clothing can give you a certain advantage or leverage or allow you to move them or stall or do guard passes. But if you don't even know what a guard pass is, well, that rule is probably not going to apply to you at all. No headbutting. Okay. Headbutting would change the game if they brought that back into the sport of MMA. It used to be allowed in the UFC, and it used to be allowed in those old vale tudo matches in Brazil. And if you watch those, it's quite interesting and quite telling about where and when and why headbutts happen. They happen while grappling. So if you don't know how to grapple, you don't know how to apply a headbutt efficiently. Headbutts happen either standing in a clinch when the superior clinch fighter gains superior position, the inside position, and then they can strike with the head. Headbutting happens on the ground when the top fighter is able to gain the top position, the dominant position, and then apply the headbutts. So if you are unable to grapple effectively and efficiently, then, well, headbutts are not going to help you out. You have to remember also that these rules go both ways. If they legalize these fouls in mixed martial arts, then your opponents would also be training to do these things against you. What else? No biting. Cannot bite your opponent. Now, if your martial art is based on biting, well, if you're a rattlesnake, might be an effective thing. But if you're a human and you're sinking your teeth into another human, well, first of all, I'd recommend don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, you don't know where the other guy's been, and you're going to have his blood in your mouth. Gross. There's some bloodborne illnesses in there probably. Hepatitis, HIV, who knows what. Second, if you bite into somebody, sink your teeth into them, they're going to be moving around quite a bit. Your teeth might come with them. Now, if you are in a position to bite, what that means is you're probably in an inferior position. You're on the bottom. It's a desperation move because you don't know how to fight and your opponent does. So learn how to fight first, worry about biting later. Next rule. No hair pulling. Well, hair pulling, interesting. I don't think about this rule ever, to be honest. So if you're fighting me, unless I've been growing out my beard or my chest hair for a while, this probably is not going to apply. If you watch women in street fights with each other, there's a lot of hair pulling that goes on. It doesn't happen as much with men. It's almost like there's this unspoken manly agreement. God, not going to pull your hair. Let's trade punches or something. But it happens a lot when women fight each other on the street in these untrained altercations. Now again, if your martial art is based on hair pulling and you don't have anything except hair pulling at your disposal, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage against somebody who understands how to actually fight. What else? Fish hooking. That's inserting a finger into the mouth and pulling. Now, if you're in a position to fish hook your opponent, you're in a position to do much better things. For example, you can fish hook somebody from back mount, from full mount, really just from the dominant positions. And if you're in a dominant position, you've got better things to do. For example, what's going to do more damage? Pulling on somebody's mouth or strangling them to death? Probably number 2. What else? Intentionally placing a finger into any orifice or into a cut or laceration of an opponent. So if your opponent is cut over the eye, for example, and you want to make it worse, you can't do that thing that boxers used to do before they stitched the thumb to the mid of the glove before the 1950s and dig the thumb into there. But if you're in a clinch position in a mixed martial arts fight and you're busying your hands trying to poke the guy, that's the wrong thing to do with your hands. You're going to lose control of that situation. If you want to aggravate a cut, here's a totally legal way to do it. Grow some stubble on your chin so it's nice and rough. Use your hands to control your opponent. Dig your chin into that cut. Rub it around. Open it up so that blood starts dripping into the eyes, blinding your opponent. Totally legal. Kind of gross, but totally legal. What else? No groin attacks. Now, for those folks who come from a reality-based self-defense system, and they say things like, well, I won't compete in MMA because they don't allow groin strikes, and my fighting system is 99.9% groin attacks. Well, if you want to effectively strike the groin, you actually have to know how to strike in the first place. You have to understand footwork. If you can reliably land an inside leg kick in a kickboxing match, then you can probably reliably land a groin kick. But if you can't, then you will never land that groin kick against a fighter who understands how to fight, who is intelligently defending themselves. And you might say, well, groin kicks happen all the time in the UFC. I always see people getting low blows. Well, yeah, you do. That stuff does happen all the time, which is why, what's this? That's a Thai steel cup. It's made out of metal, it's wrapped in leather, it's really hard. Okay? I wear this every single day when I train. I got kicked and kneed in the groin like 17 times yesterday, training students and sparring with my training partners. And thanks to this engineering wonder, didn't feel a thing. And you might say, well, then why do they overreact so much when they get kicked in the groin? Why? Because they want a 5-minute break. If you're wearing a A well-designed cup, and not all cups are well-designed. If you're wearing a plastic one, it's probably going to shatter if you get kicked really hard. They have some good fiberglass ones on the market, but just get a steel or a aluminium one for my British friends. Why? Because it's the best bang for the buck. And make sure to tie it on correctly, really tight. Otherwise, it's not going to do its job the way it should. And a lot of people say, well, in street fights, we don't have any rules. And if you don't have any rules and you plan on getting in a street fight, why aren't you wearing one of those? And you might say, nobody plans on getting in a street fight, it just happens. No. No. Not true. People choose to get into street fights. What they don't choose to get into is aggravated assaults. There's a huge difference between an aggravated assault where somebody jumps out and attacks you, and a street fight, which is two guys getting mad at each other and posturing and saying angry words and pushing each other, and then eventually turning into haymakers and schoolyard bully headlocks. What else? Back to the rules. Small joint manipulation. This is a commonly misunderstood one. It does not mean manipulating the wrist. It means manipulating one or two fingers. If you want to grab the fingers, you must have control of 3 or more fingers. So this is legal. This is legal. This, if I'm bending or twisting the fingers to try to break them, is not legal. This, with a single finger, bending or twisting the finger, is illegal. That is small joint manipulation, single fingers or 2 fingers. That, totally fine. Okay? But again, if your martial art is entirely based on grabbing a single finger, then it sucks. Learn something else. Learn some additional information. That's kind of the underlying theme here. What else? Next, the stupidest rule in all of mixed martial arts, the 12 to 6 elbow. It is a foul to bring an elbow vertically downward from the 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock position. If there is any arc in that elbow, it is then a legal elbow. So if I'm lying on my back in the guard, I can now start dropping those elbows in the same exact fashion on my opponent's head. But if it is coming straight down in this fashion, it is now a foul. Now, that's a really stupid rule because, well, a lot of them are stupid rules because the rules of mixed martial arts were not penned by mixed martial artists. They were authored by doctors and boxing commissions and businessmen. And they made these rules based on what they felt looked safe. And the doctor who lobbied for this to be illegal did so because he felt it looked unsafe. Now I got to tell you, you can apply a whole lot more force with one of these, or a spinning elbow. There's a ton of pressure in one of those. A lot more than you can get in one of these. But again, it's what looks scary. I mean, that's why we have gloves in MMA today. Initially, there were no gloves in MMA. Gloves are a weapon. They're not a safety device. This is a weapon. Let's talk about that for just a second. If I, say I got this kettlebell here, it's made out of iron, and asked you, here, punch this with your bare hand as hard as you can, you'd be like, I'm not going to hit that very hard. Put a glove on, wrap your hand up in padding and leather. You can tee off on this thing with relative impunity. Why? Because that's a weapon. The whole reason they added gloves to boxing was not to protect the fighters. It was to make the sport more exciting, because back when it was bare knuckle, the fighters, well, they were really, really careful not to break their hands against elbows and foreheads and things like that, and so they would throw their punches sparingly. There was a lot of infighting, a lot of clinch fighting, a lot of body shots, and the headshots, they did happen, but there were no wild flurries, and there was a lot less long-range sniping with jabs and things like that, because the hands were unprotected. So they added the gloves to make it more exciting for the fans. But for some reason, we've come to associate gloves with safety. Gloves are safe. Oh, it's like your face is being caressed with gentle leather and padding. No, it's not. No, it's not. It'll make you a little less marked up on the outside, but man, it's going to allow that guy to tee off with impunity, especially if you wrap it up underneath. So I would love to get rid of a lot of the rules of mixed martial arts. One of them, get rid of the gloves. Okay, what else? Strikes to the spine or the back of the head or anything behind the ears. That's defined as the mohawk area behind the ears. This area, you are not allowed to strike. Okay? And for good reason, because that is really dangerous. You can mess people up by striking them really hard back there. So, I sometimes hear people say something along the lines of, well, if somebody just shot in for a double leg on me, I would just karate chop them in the back of the head and instantly kill them. And my guess is you probably never sparred with a good wrestler before. So you're not going to have time to do that against a good wrestler. If your response to a double leg takedown is a karate chop, and you can actually land it, it's a crappy double leg takedown. Because your response to a double leg takedown should be much more immediate. Change the position of your hips, change the position of your body, get yourself in a position where you are not going to kiss the canvas. Now, because of that rule, no striking the back of the head, the neck, or the spine, some fighters do take certain liberties. And you will see some fighters fight from a turtle position, where in a street fight you could start clubbing them with elbows and stuff in the spine and the head, and that'd be horrible. Now, if they changed that rule, we would see that tendency disappear, and we would see people move much more urgently to face their opponent head on. What else? Throat strikes of any kind, including without limitation grabbing the trachea. So you're not allowed to punch or strike or karate chop the throat. And, well, if you watch good fighters, what do? They're covering their throat with their chin. Humans are among the few animals that actually have a chin. Humans have one, elephants have one, and I can't think of any other animals that actually have elongated chins like humans and pachyderms. Why do we have this? Well, the primary reason, to protect our neck. And if we've got our chin tucked and our forehead forward and our hands up, it's going to be extremely difficult to strike the throat of a intelligently resisting opponent who knows how to fight. Now, if you have somebody staring up into la la land, up like this, and they don't even know a punch is coming, they don't even know they're in a fight, you can judo chop them in the throat all you want, but that's never ever going to happen in an MMA fight. And if you are wasting your time trying to rip somebody's trachea out, well, you're probably going to get armbarred because you don't understand grappling. What else? Clawing, pinching, or twisting the flesh. This is something new students always do. They always claw, pinch, and twist the flesh. And I often go home with scratches on my neck and scratches on my face. And my wife is like, new students again, huh? I'm like, yep, new students. So if you are trying to hold on to somebody with your fingers, you're not going to be able to hold on. Hold on with your wrists. That's going to give you control. Holding on with the fingers is simply going to slip off and scratch them and piss them off. So when this happens at my gym with the new students, they try to claw me. Well, I'll squish them to death and let them know, hey, that doesn't fly here at this gym. Cut it out and learn how to fight. And again, that is the underlying theme of this video. Cut it out and learn how to fight. Learn how to fight first. Worry about all the dirty stuff later. Kicking the head of a grounded opponent, or soccer kicking the head. A downed opponent means there are 4 points of contact. It used to be 3. So currently, 2 hands and 2 feet on the floor. That is a downed opponent. A kneeling opponent, if you're on 1 knee or 2 knees, you're a downed opponent. If you're sitting on your butt or lying on your back, you're a downed opponent. And you may not kick or knee or stomp the head of a downed opponent. So, if you're thinking, well, I would dominate MMA if I could just kick the head of a downed opponent. Well, you kind of have to work to get in that position in the first place. Because you are standing over somebody on the ground, that is because you took them down, you swept them, or you threw them, or you knocked them down with your superior striking prowess, and they fell. And if you don't have superior striking prowess or grappling prowess to be able to put yourself in that position, you will never, ever have to worry about kicking the head of a downed opponent. Instead, you'll probably be on the other end of that equation. It's also important to understand that not all mixed martial arts organizations abide by these rules, especially this one. For example, ONE FC in Singapore allows fighters to kick and knee the head of a downed opponent. When I started fighting here in China, they also allowed that same thing. You could kick or knee the head of a downed opponent, which was kind of unfortunate because they told me, oh yeah, it's UFC rules, and I got in there and the guy starts kicking at my head, throwing soccer kicks when I'm trying to play guard, and I was like, whoa, yeah, let's change the game plan up. So, if you plan on competing in the sport of mixed martial arts, make sure you understand which rule system you're competing in first. What else? Stomping an opponent on the ground. So you can kick the body or the legs of a downed opponent, but you may not stomp. I think it's kind of a dumb rule. I mean, you can do a full-on axe kick to a downed opponent. I guess they decided that had more artistic merit or whatever, but you're not allowed to stomp. Now, you can stomp a standing opponent however you want. You can stomp the feet, you can stomp the knee, whatever. But downed opponent, have to kick them. Got to put some artistic merit behind it, I guess. What else? Swearing or offensive language in the cage is illegal. So if your martial art is based on being foul-mouthed and saying angry, mean words to your opponent, well, if he knows anything about fighting, I suggest get your hands up and stop talking. Any unsportsmanlike conduct that causes an injury to an opponent. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Essentially, anything else that the referee would deem as a foul, such as attacking an opponent during a break. So in MMA, there are 5-minute rounds, 1 minute rest between each round, 3 5-minute rounds in a non-title fight, 5 5-minute rounds in a title fight. I personally would like to see the rounds done away with and just have one long round, because those short rounds, rounds at all, with those breaks in between, well, they ruin the rhythm of a fight. You can be in a totally dominant position, winning the fight, and then break time comes and the guy gets an instant reset. I don't like that. Also, the 5-minute round, I mean, it takes an average of 2 minutes to get to the fight to the ground in the first place, and if you can keep the fight on the ground, that leaves you 3 minutes to grapple. If he gets up once and you take him down again, now you have a minute left to grapple. So those rules do favor strikers when all other things are even. So I'd love to see just one long round, no gloves, a lot like the original UFC, just with more knowledge, more experience. What else? You may not attack an opponent who is under the care of the referee. Why is he under the care of the referee? Why? Because the referee has stopped the fight. He stopped the fight for one of the following reasons. Either the fight is over because you just won, so stop attacking your opponent, you jerk, because you just won the fight, go celebrate. Or he is assessing an injury because of a foul that you have committed. So stop it, take a step back, retreat to a neutral corner, await the instructions. What else? Timidity, avoiding contact, consistent dropping of the mouthpiece, or faking an injury is illegal. So basically, being a scared little wimp who doesn't want to fight is illegal in the sport of MMA. So if your martial art is based on not fighting at all and avoiding contact and spitting out your mouthpiece and pretending that you're hurt, then you probably won't do very well in the sport of mixed martial arts. What else? Interference from a mixed martial artist's corner man. So your corner man is not allowed to jump in and fight for you. He's not allowed to throw things in the cage or otherwise do something that would disrupt the action. Now, in street fights, we see the fighters' buddies interfere all the time. If they end up on the ground in a position that the crowd doesn't like, they will always jump in and help out or pull them apart. But in the sport of mixed martial arts, we want to see who is the better fighter, not who brought more friends to the fray. Next rule. Flagrant disregard of the referee's instructions. The referee gives very simple instructions in a fight. Are you ready? Are you ready? Fight. That's one. The other one, stop. Stop the fight, because it's over. Or time to assess a foul. So, if you keep fighting when the referee tells you to stop, or you start fighting before the fight actually starts, that's dumb. Just don't do it. Spiking an opponent to the canvas on his or her head or neck. In other words, a piledriver. That. You know that move from pro wrestling where you pick the guy's hips up and drop him down, sometimes jumping on top of him with your weight? That is the one grappling technique, the one throw that is illegal in the sport of mixed martial arts. Now, I've only seen somebody even attempt that in MMA once. I don't think I've ever seen anybody attempt that in a street fight. It's a tough one to pull off against somebody who's actually fighting back. Not impossible, just difficult. And last but not least, attacking an opponent after the bell has sounded the end of the period of unarmed combat. So if you're fighting after the fight is over, cut it out. Go home. Celebrate. If 15 minutes or 25 minutes of fighting is not enough for you and you want to do more, then understand this. There's always another fight. So just be patient. Bide your time. Anyway, those are the fouls of mixed martial arts. Everything else is on the table. Everything else is on the table. So you can kick the knee, you can do wrist locks, you can do whatever throw you want except for a pile driver. It's a pretty broad, open rule set that allows most martial arts to compete against each other inside the octagon. So, there you have it. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train. Oh, whoa, I can't believe I almost forgot this rule. No spitting. So all my spitting Cobra friends out there, you guys have a legitimate grievance. You would totally rule the UFC if not for that rule.